Happy Sunday, SMITE fans, and welcome to the final day of this week in the SPL. It is Dolson and Mifflin on the desk for you here today. Mifflin, it has been, admittedly, a pretty quick week here in the SPL. We've had 4 sets, 8 games, a lot of lopsided matchups we've seen so far.
Yeah, but you know what? Today, with only 1 set, I think we could even make the bet that it's going to be just as long as yesterday, just considering who's going to be playing. Sanguine versus Spacestation, the 2 late-game behemoths. We might be looking at 3 games, 50 minutes apiece.
That's right. Could be a longer set here today between these 2 late-game mindset teams. Of course, the Radiance PK matchup postponed, so you can see our wording on that at SMITE Pro on Twitter. The organizations have put out some statements as well. But here are your standings going into the final set of the weekend. So top 4 implications really on this one here, Mifflin, between Sanguine and SSG, 2 teams who earlier on in the weekend beat their respective opponents 2-0. So let's look at Sanguine, I think, first here, and where a lot of the success has started to build up for these guys. I think I want to focus in on Panatom, because you start to talk about the slow start, and maybe we need to stop talking about the slow start that these guys had to the phase, because they've really picked it up since then. And I think more specifically, Panatom has as well. He's really picked up the pace on his game and started to provide big, meaningful impacts in-game for his team.
I think Panatom's story arc is a little bit interesting, especially because it kind of runs counter to the rest of Sanguine. Sanguine is a team that we associate with picking the best gods and then waiting for 25 minutes. But Panatom at the beginning of the phase was kind of struggling with the meta jungler picks, and then he started picking up gods like Thor and Mercury, who by no means are bad, but not really what you would associate with those top picks. And he's been absolutely popping off on them. The global pressure has been really good. His kill participation has gone way up. This guy found a couple of picks that really work with him, and he's been sticking to it, and he's been looking a lot better for it.
Do you think, with that being said, Thor maybe makes his way into the ban phase here today, if you're SSG, considering taking that away?
I mean, if it were anyone besides Panatom, probably not. But this guy is, I would say Thor is by and large one of his best characters. It's really Thor and Mercury in my mind. And I think Sanguine does such a good job of just leveraging that global ultimate to help them through the early game and get them to the point of the game where they really want to play, which is 25, 30 minutes in.
Well, there has been some carryover. Panatom has played Nemesis about half the time over the last 6 or so games that he's played. Looking at Cheerio over for SSG, there has been a Nemesis game, but it's been a lot of Erlang Shen, a couple games of Kali here recently for Cheerio on SSG. What have you seen out of the Space Station jungler over the last few sets?
Pressure, a little bit more pressure, and then some pressure after that. I mean, Cheerio is constantly getting involved in the early game. He's constantly invading the jungle. If he's a one-man army invading a speed buff, like it's not going to stop him. If his teammate says, okay, I'm not going to be able to get there, Cherio's going anyway, because he's constantly looking for that one step in the early game to make sure that they, too, can reach that late-game phase. There's a lot of parity between SSG and Sanguine.
And I think I've loved following Cheerio through this rise of the Erlang Shen specifically, because we saw Sino yesterday rip their opponents apart on this Erlang Shen, just starting to become, and I love the way you worded it, you know, that you build it more like an assassin, you play a little bit more like assassin, and I think Cheerio is one of the junglers that's absolutely found his way sort of into that jungle mindset, so you expect to see some Erlang Shen on the table today.
I'm thinking Erlang Shen, failing that, probably a Kali pickup for Cheerio. It seems like he really vibes on the picks that are going to get in your face and then auto-attack until he's dead. And Kali and Erlang essentially just completely fit that bill.
Well, up to this point, it's an undefeated weekend for SSG. Cheerio's going to have an important matchup against Panatom. We were able to sit down with him, talk to him, see how he's feeling going up against Sanguine today.
All right, we have jungler for Space Station Gaming, Cheerio, joining us. Cherry, a big game for you guys here. You guys are near the top of the standings right now, but facing down a Sanguine team that has looked pretty good as of late. How do you think you match up against this team, just playstyle-wise?
I think we have a very similar playstyle. I think we peak at different times in the game, but we're very close in the time we peak. Like I said, we peak like maybe 5 minutes earlier than them or something. So if we get the team fight we want at the time we want, we could win. If we delay the time I think we're strong, they could easily come on top.
I think despite your playstyles being very similar, the way you evaluate which gods you want to pick and ban seem pretty different. For me, Sanguine kind of look at the top of the tier list and just pick whatever is really strong at the time. You guys are picking Jingwei mid and Chang'e mid and who knows. What else? How much of an advantage do you think that gives you in this set?
I think it makes us like pretty like annoying to play against because you play in scrims, you play against all these gods, and then you play against us, and we have a completely different, not completely different. There's obviously some similarities, but we play like Dodgers especially. Anyways, he just plays differently from other mid laners, so it's hard for people to play against him. So when they try to play against us, they're just like, okay, we should try to ban him out because it's easier. But as if he has enough gods, it doesn't really matter. And mainly just we play around Dart, just make sure like what does he want to do, like what does he want to play, and we just try to accommodate that as much as we can.
It's worked out for you so far. You're near the top of the standings and can take that spot for yourselves with the win here today. Good luck today, Cherry. Looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Yeah, we've I think focused a decent bit, if not almost entirely, on the jungle matchup here in this one. I'm very excited to watch the mid lane matchup as well. Mifflin, kind of final thoughts on this one before we jump into picks and bans. How much overlap do you think there is between Shinto and Dardes out of the mid lane, as far as god picks?
Well, Dardes can play literally every mage, and then
So
Shinto's also doing every top pick mage, but I think Dardes has a little bit of just flavor picks tossed in there. Right. I mean, you heard Cherio bring up the Jingwei and the other hunters. He's also got gods like Hera and Aphrodite that need to be addressed, and that really is one of the mainstay strengths of SSG, is having Dardes in the mid, control the game on these off-meta picks, absorbing a ton of the bans and allowing SSG to play whatever it is that they need to on the given day. It's so absolutely powerful.
Yeah, Darda is a little bit too difficult to lock down. It's those ability-based hunters in the mid that throw a little extra spice into the mix. Let's see what picks and bans have in store for us for game number one. Lots to focus on. Almost when you look at these teams, these caliber of teams playing one another, there's almost too much to focus on. You almost have to go meta-wise when you're looking towards the bans. Persephone absolutely fits into that mold, but I guess that's kind of the advantage we've talked about. Having someone like Dardes on your team, I think it's the Aphrodite and the Hera effectively spot banned against him every single set. What kind of an advantage do you think that buys you?
It gets you whatever you want in your top pick. If your whole game plan is revolving around maybe a Kali in the jungle, you can almost guarantee yourself that and something that's going to be able to mesh up with it well. If you want to try and force your way into getting a magical hunter, if Sanguine's throwing away 2 bans to Dardes, you can almost always get either Freyo or Oleron if you so choose, or you can ban it out yourself. I think it allows you the opportunity to get at least 1 meta pick, but when you're in the first pick position, it also opens up the enemy team to getting 2 meta picks in return. It's a bit of a double-edged sword, but I think SSG have a pretty good handle on how to play around it.
Yeah, I guess at this point you have to, because it happens to you every single set if you're Space Station Gaming, and we'll continue here against Sanguine. No surprise, Hera and Aphrodite taken off the board. Yemoja there as well. So Freya still around, Cthulhu, Amaterasu, all available. It is going to be the Freya that takes a seat here. So you start to look at some of those big priority picks for SSG here. The Amaterasu maybe comes to mind. She's been that big priority pick out of the solo lane. Nika up against Yarkor today is going to be hyper important. So maybe that solo lane mindset is where they go. And it sure is. Mifflin, though, kind of to counter back on that, Cthulhu is still in an interesting spot. Sometimes we've seen him as that answer back. Other times we haven't. Do you think this is a good spot where Cthulhu maybe fits?
Cthulhu, it's just an interesting pick because we've realized now that he's not nearly as strong as we thought he was coming into the phase, but we know for a fact that Yarkor enjoys that character, but knowing that Sanguine have these priority picks that they really highly evaluate, Jingwei comes to mind, the jungler likely going to come to mind as well. When Nemesis is still available like this, Sanguine's almost always going to go to it. I think that SSG are in a spot where they don't really want to pick up Cthulhu. We know that Raffer hasn't really played it in the past. So if Sanguine is looking towards that pick, they can get it third slotted or maybe even after the second phase of bans.
That's right. You can wait a little bit longer there if you're Sanguine. So Jingwei, Nemesis. I mean, talk about a powerful duo there for Sanguine to lock in for themselves. One of Netrioid's favorite picks, and then, of course, Panatom out of the jungle. Strong for him there as well. Rom has started to see this big rise of play, so now we're going to get to see more traditional, standard physical damage hunters going up against one another. What do you like in that Rom versus Jingwei matchup?
I like Rom's ability to potentially fight into it. If he finds the cripple early on, there's a couple of cheeky ways you can get a solo kill. I mean, Jingwei's main bastion of safety being the ultimate to create just a huge gap of space between you and an opponent. Doesn't really matter if Rom's going to just go ahead and fly in the air and snipe you down from a range. I think it's a pretty decent matchup for Vote going into Netrioid here. but it's still the safest hunter in the game inside of Jingwei. There shouldn't be too much action over there.
Right.
I'm worried about how well are either of the hunters going to rotate into the mid game. Rom can just walk into the jungle and clean up some kills in mid if he has to. Jingwei is going to have to commit her body a little bit more if she wants to get involved in the 3v3.
And we were talking a bit about Cthulhu here and where he maybe needs to fall. I think this is it for Sanguine, because SSG likely ban out that Cthulhu in the second wave if he's not already taken by Sanguine, so I think a smart draft position there. Let's touch on this Hebo, though, for a second. We've seen him maybe more recently out of that mid-roll, but a pretty healthy split, I'd argue, between jungle and mid. So I think that's an interesting spot SSG are in now, where it could be Cherio, could be Dardas out of the mid lane.
Yeah, I'm leaning a little bit towards Cherio here, and it's such a smart pickup into Nemesis in general. Her shield is so hard to deal with, but with Water Spout, you can immediately drop that, and when she pops it, remove the shield, then go into the Crushing Wave, likely finish him up with just the Water Hands. We call Hebo the god of 3 ultimates because every single one of his damaging abilities does about 800, 1000, 1200 damage. It's a super strong matchup, and it's going to help out a lot into this Cthulhu as well. Crushing Wave as a repositioning tool, just run through into the Madness Cthulhu. Easy reposition, easy huge chunk of damage, and then you can likely look to follow up with the rest of your team.
Poor Water Carpet left out of the ultimate conversation. I agree. Doesn't quite fit that ultimate mold there. 3 ultimates, better than 1 that a lot of the other gods in the game have here. Terra, we have not seen a lot of Terra here, Mifflin. Likely for Rongyu then out of that support role. Gonna be a Jingwei Terra, unless something crazy happens here for Sanguine with their final pick. What do you think about Terra in this current meta? Do you think she fits into the Sanguine draft so far?
It fits into Sanguine's playstyle for sure. Terra is one of the best counter-engage / disengage gods of the game. If you think the enemy team's coming onto you, immediately drop your ultimate. Any bit of damage should be able to be healed up immediately, and then you can have the rest of your team either run away or run into the enemy. And it's really good into dot damage, which is why I'm surprised to see this AMC hovered. But AMC brings a lot of pressure into mid, so it seems like SSG are trying to really push it down there, play around that 3v3. I think that essentially guarantees that it is going to be Hebo jungle. I like both drafts so far. I'm expecting Sanguine to pick up some huge AoE damage here.
Thoth has some of it, I guess. I mean, you get a big snipe straight line damage out of him. Is that what you expected to see Sanguine round out their draft with?
I wasn't expecting to see Thoth in particular, but he kind of fits the mark of what you're looking for. It seems like Sanguine's draft at that point was missing a lot of the ability to just really lay in damage in that team fight phase, be able to poke from afar or anything like that. Thoth is going to be able to do every single bit of that, and with the dash and the hieroglyphic wall, it's going to be a really good reposition tool to deal with what Hebois is bringing. But Thoth into AMC in that mid lane, AMC slams you with the ultimate, you're just going to be stuck there at already 50% health.
Yeah, there are a lot of priority picks for Shinto not banned out here, so they're obviously feeling something good here in this Thoth. If you kind of have to summarize, do you lean one way or the other heading into Game 1?
I think I really like SSG's draft, man. It's got so much cohesion to it.
SSG versus Sanguine. Game number 1. Let's round out this week in the SPL.
Thanks, Dolson and Mifflin. Fitch and Gore here as he moved down to probably the highlight match of the week, SSG versus Sanguine. A chance to find out if Sanguine, or rather SSG, can be alone up there at the top, or if Sanguine can close that gap a little bit. And Sanguine come in with some different picks here, Gore, which I think is something pretty interesting. Take a look at Shinto on this Thoth. I mean, in the late game, Thoth is so strong, but are you worried about him getting there, or how do you feel about this pick in general?
I think normally be a little worried about him. I do think he's going to have a lot of trouble, but for the most part, he's safe, I think, against this jungle, right? Like, Cherio isn't going to be able to collapse on him that well. He's got a good dash with good length on it that should be able to keep him safe. Yeah, so he's not maybe that stressed out about it, but I do think the Hebo AMC combo is just going to be able to roll over them. I don't think Panatom and Shinto are, well, at least theoretically, going to be the big pillars of this early game. But like you said, as they start to transition into it, I think that combo becomes just essential for Sanguine and their ability to just make this game work and just take down SSG in any of the team fights.
It does mean both mid laners have delete potential with their ultimate. You saw Rongyu trying to do that Terra start where you delay your own minion wave that gives you some time to do something like this. Come over towards the Alpha Harpy and make sure they can't just shove your wave right away. It didn't end up mattering much as Spacestation also went towards their Alpha, both teams electing to go with that slower and safer start. so not a ton came from it. But I think you're kind of right to hone in on this mid lane matchup as Raffer gets the lockdown in Metroid. Not enough for a first blood, but boy was he low. Good patience there, not using the beads. And now it's Sanguine getting aggressive. A two-man stun from Wrong Hue evens this long lane back up a little bit. I wanted to talk about something else, but they forced us over the long lane.
And maybe it's the support main in me talking, but I'm really excited to see this Terra, but I'm still very much on the fence about it. It's one of those just picks that there's a reason we haven't seen her a whole lot, right? She's not going to bring the same capabilities some of the other top supports right now are. Aggression, I think she can match along with a lot of the warriors we've seen over there. We just saw a two-man stun, so you can't really argue against that one. She brings the sustain for herself and her team. Her ult is really good. I think Wrong Yu's going to find himself having fun in this game and kind of essential setup for his team. But the problem is she has to be in the fray almost too deep all of the time, and I feel like that might be what ends up kind of hurting Sanguine here. If Wrong Yu just gets picked off pretty easily before a fight can really start, then a lot of what Sanguine have to maybe engage, at least off of him, disappears. Then all of the pressure just ends up shifting over to Yarkor, maybe making it a little bit too much for this support pick. But we'll have to see. I think it's very dependent on this lane. If Wrong Yu can get ahead, then Raffer's going to just be looking for silences and control the rest of the game.
He's going to need it because I love a combo like Terra plus Thoth. Any kind of easily applied CC, in my mind, really works for Thoth because he just loves having a target stay still for even a moment and then being able to get off those hieroglyphic assaults so consistently. And I think that root, the ability to get that root in a big circle, could be huge for their late game team fight potential, especially if Shinto is hitting a final judgment or some ones, and you see like a Nemesis ultimate coming through. The potential is certainly there for them if they can make it. I'm just a bit worried. Like you said, Terra can be bullied. If her dash is interrupted, she's so vulnerable. The Panatom, or not Panatom, but Shito could certainly be vulnerable as well, reliant so much on his dash for safety. If Space Station can find a way to punish, then we won't have to worry about how impressive Sanguine's late game might eventually be.
And that's where those Ganesh silences are going to come through, right? I mean, you just catch them right in the middle, or you catch them right before they're able to, even. And Raffer, especially when the 3v3 starts up, is going to put pressure on Shinto right here, is able to slow down Wrong Yu just a little bit. And those are those moments where that Ganesh pick becomes so strong, which is, again, maybe why you start to worry a little bit, and maybe sweat some beads if you're a Sanguine fan, because of the fact that this Terra pick is just a little off. But you also have to be worried about other things. I mean, you get Yarkor, Panatom, and I would say Netrioid on 3 staples for Sanguine. But the last time, at least in my memory, that I got to see Nika on Amaterasu, he almost single-handedly won the game for Space Station, let alone the fact that they were doing well outside of that. So it is something to be stressed about, I think, on the other side. Both of these teams came in with really, really solid compositions, and it's these small picks like the Ganesh, like the AMC, or this Terra that are really going to make or break whether or not you can find a win.
Certainly is scary, Nika and Amaterasu, just as a god and player combo. Certainly got to make sure you're giving them their due respect. Cherio has plenty of experience on the Habwa as well. This is a scary draft on both sides. We were talking about that during the picks and bans. That it's been a weekend where we've seen some games won in picks and bans, but I don't think this is the case, right? This is these two teams coming in with some very evenly matched compositions. I mean, how many times was Netroid called a Jingwei one trick, back in Phase 1? I think he has done a great job getting away from that. He's played a lot of different stuff, but this Jingwei is about as comfort as it gets for Netroid. So on both sides, this is going to be an excellent, potentially mid to late game. These are two teams that are very happy to wait throughout the early game to play things a bit slow and then let things get decided, from the 20-minute mark on.
And you have to think, not only going to comfort picks, but momentum really kind of riding with Sanguine right now. They're on a 5-set streak, and that's just solid.
Good work there. Did you see how Cheerio held the ultimate? I don't think they were ever planning on trying to all-in Yarkor just now. They really wanted to force out that ultimate, get that on cooldown, and then come back over for some ganks. But Panatom is here, and Cheerio has saved the ult. The knock-up not going to land. Neither is the first ability. That's why Panatom moves in, but Nika there to provide the backup. A great silence means Panatom essentially ends up wasting that blink. Space Station able to come over, force out Yarkor's ultimates, Panatom's blink. Not a bad rotation.
And maybe one of the best examples that we've gotten in an early game where you can truly see why Hebo is just so good against that Nemesis. She's got so many slows, so much capability to lock you down and chase you down. And Atlas of the Yellow River just says, yeah, nah. Like, slows, who cares? We're just going forward. Not only are we going forward, but we're moving faster now on top of it. And it's not just me, Cherio, who gets this. It's the whole team. Anybody who happens to step in this is going to be fine. And that's just going to make it more difficult. Panatom, you know, that blink being down, not being able to get the good slows consistently against his opposing jungler, it's going to make it awkward for him, I think, throughout the duration of this game to find a good engagement, and that maybe takes some of the structure away from Sanguine. A lot of their games where they do exceedingly well is when Panatom's having a great time in the jungle.
It is, and we got to be honest. I mean, I don't think Panatom's looked great on Nemesis. He has looked excellent on things like the Thor. He had a great Pele game the other day too, but I don't know if this sort of top-tier meta pick really 100% flows with his style. I'm not saying that I have any reason to think it doesn't, other than that he just hasn't always looked great on it. So this would be a great example, I think, for him to try and show us that this is something he can also play, that you got to be worried about it, and they're not just picking it to take it away from Spacestation, to take it away from Cheerio, so they don't have to play against him.
It is that awkward pick of, well, we don't want you to have the counter to Cthulhu, but we also think Panatom can run it. Like, it's not something they've shied away from on Sanguine, but like you said, you're looking at Panatom shining brighter on other picks. This is going to be maybe just par for the course with the Nemesis. You know, if he goes even, it's a fine game for him. And that's the thing I think that has been a little more worrisome in the jungle for Sanguine, and kind of all Phase 2 that's been looming over them at the very beginning, the first couple of weeks. Everyone was saying, you know, everyone on Sanguine looked great. Panatom had fallen just slightly behind over the summer break. Then it caught back up, and like I said, now they're on a 5-set win streak, so you have to think they figured themselves out. But that is always that shadow that's going to follow them. And now that Rongyu's over here, it feels like they are putting that pressure, trying to find the ganks, get Panatom ahead, get him the farm he needs, and find a way into this game.
We can take a quick moment. Going to round up these builds here. Gore, Divine Ruin, first item there for Shinto, so prioritizing some of that anti-heal, some flat pin right out of the gate. Looks like Panatom going to be doing a Golden Blade Nemesis, you'd think, here with this start for him with this build as well. So far things looking, I would say, pretty standard from what we've seen. I think it's worth kind of keeping an eye on how Shinto chooses to finish out this Thoth build, because I don't know that you always want to build him exactly the same way that you do a lot of other mages. A lot of people feel good with CDR in his kit, so you can have Hieroglyphic Assault going all the time, but you might also benefit from just straight up as much damage as possible from your final judgment. So very interested to see how Shinto rounds the rest of this out.
And I'm on board with you, specifically for some CDR, just because we were talking about how important that dash is going to be, and honestly, the more often it's up for Shinto, I think the safer it'll be, but there is always that, hey, I can one-shot you potential that comes through. Also, maybe the easiest confirm throughout all of this, save for maybe Cherio's ult, for like a Fury, for a Fire Giant, and I think that's going to give Sanguine at least a small advantage when pushing into objectives like a Gold Fury, or at least fights over around it.
Just good work there from Sanguine, able to use that damage from Shinto from long range to help try and control that fight, even though they didn't technically have all the numbers there, spacing a lot of members. But Sanguine able to make out of it safely, and as expected, this game so far has been a little slow, you know, not really much of a lead at all for either one of these teams, like a couple hundred gold, and that could bounce back to back, wave to wave, just kind of as each team farms and takes their backs. Cheerio getting some damage into Shinto, but still not really any kind of hard commit coming out from either of these teams. I think this makes sense for both of them, not just with their playstyle, Gore, but don't you want your Rom and your AMC and your Amaterasu and your Hebo to get items online? And same for Sanguine. I mean, both of these teams are happy to wait until they hit their big power spikes.
I think, at least if I'm Panatom right now, the only time I'm looking for a fight is if I see Cheerio throw down that Atlas. The minute that's off cooldown, you know you can blink in. And now that he has that back, they could look to try and fight into him. I mean, this is the largest grouping we've gotten to see in this game. I'm just waiting for someone to make the move.
Well, it's Dharmic Pillars plus the Silence, and Yarkor, the one stuck in the middle inside the ultimate. Yarkor doesn't stand a chance, but Shinto hits Dardas. That makes it 1-for-1 mid for Solo, but Panatom's still in trouble. Cheerio able to get him with an auto on the backside, but Nika has also been isolated. There's the root, so that means Shinto can clean up the kills. 2 for the Sanguine mid laner, but Cheerio sees more materializing in front of him, closing the gap. But an excellent stun from Ronggyu saves the mid and Solo for jungle Solo. And that's a close one here for our first match of the game, first fight of the game.
And that's a just a fun one to see, because I think, we talk a lot about Nemesis, what she can bring specifically as a counter to this Cthulhu. And now, it's time to open up my book of Wild of Dharmic Pillars, because I think it fits into the same category, and I actually think that's why Raffer is going to spend more time on this right side of the map, or at least more willing to make these rotations. Giant box, if Yarkor ults, you're almost guaranteed a hit at that point for your Dharmic Pillars, unless he just stands still. But it's going to strip protections away. It's going to make him more vulnerable. And, admittedly, Dharmic Pillars does a lot of damage for an ult coming down from a Guardian. So I think all of that in conjunction, you get 1, maybe 2 hits if you're lucky against Yarkor there, and you're going to see it. The protection reduction, I think, is going to be the biggest part, but knowing that you then have a small window to just burst down this Cthulhu, that's part of why Nemesis has been so big in that counter-up. And I think Raffer, I mean, look, he's got 2 hunters beside him, one of the highest damaging mages next to him as well. That window is going to be enough to burn down a Cthulhu every single time. So if I'm Yarkor, that's probably the thing I'm most worried about, is if I see Raffer in the neighborhood.
And I'm glad you talk about how Space Station's backline is composed of these double hunters plus Cheerio on the mage. Because don't they cover all of everything that you need? The Havois is burst mage, instantly takes someone out of a fight with that crushing wave. Whereas Dardes and Vote provide all this sustained damage to be able to chew through a Cthulhu if they build things like the Kinsai, which looks like Vote is working on as that 3rd item for him right now. They'll have tons of potential to do every kind of damage you need, but Cheerio takes too much. Shinto from range hits the evade and punish, a little bit of help from Panatom, and Sanguine move out in front. But look at this wraparound from Nika. He wants to come around between the tier 1 and tier 2, but it looks like Sanguine recognized it. No chance for him to get in there.
I was trying to figure out if there was going to be some rotation. Yarkor coming into the mix, maybe mixing things up. He's over there behind the tier 1 on right, so he's not looking for the fight right now. He's looking for proxy farm, or maybe even invades if he can find them. Any sort of aggression, but his team, I want to say, feels like they might slow down as time goes on. I think it's more just waiting for Panatom to be as in the fight as he can be. And, for Nemesis, especially at this point, you just have the Golden Blade online. You haven't finished that 2nd item afterwards, so you're probably just going to relax anyway, and that's been the MO for both of these teams either side. They love waiting till 20 minutes and then have 2-3 fights max, and then whoever wins that 3rd one wins the game off of it. Because that's how SSG win. They love to farm it up. The same thing for Sanguine. That's just going to end up helping both sides. Like, neither one really is detrimented by waiting until a late-game team fight. It just comes down to that 5v5 phase.
Certainly, both these squads going to be comfortable with it. Looks like these hunters are going to be doing different builds, and that always makes a ton of sense, right? You're getting this power pen build from Dardes with a Transcendence into Crusher to cut out some of that healing coming out from Sanguine, not just from Yarkor, but from Wrongyu a little bit as well. And then, as we already covered, Vote has the Devo's gloves, Ninja Taobai, and what we think likely going to be the Kinsai. We'll be able to confirm that in just a moment. So already, Space Station have a ton of damage at their disposal, and obviously, it will be the Kin. So plenty of chew potential here with this draft that they've got. Even Yarkor, I think, would have to feel a little bit scary up front against all that damage from those hunters.
Yeah. I really like this, though. Again, I think diversification of build. If they both go auto-attack, it's a little easier for Shinto to just say, you know what, I need some protection. I'm just going to buy High to the Nemean. Like, block stacks all the time? Absolutely give them to me. You look more towards upgraded shells, things like that maybe slow them down. Now you have to play that balance mark, and I still think things that give you block stacks are going to be helpful. There's still 2 carries on the other side, or 2 hunters on the other side. But it is that moment that Dardes is going to play in a similar fashion to Shinto. I don't think he's going to be able to do it with the same range, since Thoth has that extended range, but looking to sit in the back line, and as you had highlighted earlier, sustain damage, but coming from abilities, throwing out your Bs, making sure your Hive is set up, and that's going to give you enough of a boost that maybe you don't have to build full attack speed to still keep up with some of the damage that's going to come out of Vote.
It's a good point. We'll still be getting plenty from the Hives. Will this Moose and Cobb, so certainly shouldn't be lacking in that department, even if this build does still end up skewing more towards the power pen route. So this next big battle, I mean, and again, I don't see any reason why it would have to happen anytime soon, but it's going to have all this amplified weight on it, Gore, because they've waited so long for this fight to happen. If it does end up happening around this Gold Fury and even 2 or 3 picks are imbalanced in one team's favor, then realistically the death timers might be long enough, if it's around the 20-minute mark, to start moving over towards something like an FG. I mean, they'll have a lot of options on the backside.
That's exactly what I was thinking when you said, waiting for it to happen. It's one of those awkward moments where sometimes fights in games like these, you don't see the Gold Fury taken first. It ends up shifting towards the Fire Giant or the Pyromancer, and they engage over there. You win, you get the Fire Giant, then the Gold Fury is just the consolation prize you awkwardly grab on your way to a Tier 1 or Tier 2 tower. But it's also that moment, like you said, where the respawn timers are just going to be kind of sleeper long. You're going to come in and all of a sudden you're out of the game for 40 seconds, and you didn't realize you were going to be out of the game for 40 seconds. You were still expecting first fight, we finally lost one, I'm going to be back in 10, don't worry about it. And so those are those moments that you have to start factoring it in. Panatom, anybody on Sanguine, if they get a pick or get picked off, then you're just fighting at a 4v5. It gives so much of an advantage over, because as you had said earlier, there's maybe 100 gold shifting between these two teams right now. The first big engagement, the first big death that happens on its own and unanswered is probably going to help pivot that lead into something more significant.
Space Station posturing a little bit near the Gold Fury, but not going to pull it just yet. Netroid continuing to be one of the only hunters right now that really values this Ichevol. It goes for this third item where a lot of people are getting Kin's and or Atalanta's bow. And it just gives you a ton of boxing potential, this item. And I think that's why we've seen Netroid try to start some fights with Vote, but Vote's just not having it, man. He and the rest of Space Station are playing this one relatively slow, playing this one calm, and just farming it up, man. And can you blame them? Look how these builds are rounding out. It's Heartward and Sovereignty for Rapper. It's this Shoguns over there for Nika. This feels like a roster that wants to kind of clump up together a little bit and then suddenly have more damage that you can handle, amplified by this Dharmic Pillars and all this burst from Cheerio. It's cohesive. The way that they're playing and the way that they're building all makes sense to me for Space Station.
And I just love this because not only does it make sense for them, but in the grand scheme of things, we've always looked at it. SSG, they want a team fight, and their best team fights are never really them engaging. Maybe you'll get one every now and then. I think they can still jump on Yarkor or force something out of Sanguine. But they have such great counter-engage in team fights that has ruined teams otherwise in the middle of a game. And Sanguine, that 5v5 has always been touted as very strong for them as well. I think this could be some of the more interesting team fights we get when that stage starts up for them, just because of the essence these teams have showcased all year so far. But it's always that question of who's going to be the first one to jump forward. If Rongyu does it, we've already mentioned how easily he can get silenced and locked down, so he has to be very careful with his aggression.
Had to be careful the same way Sanguine were as SSG stepped forward and at least confirm that Oracle vision there, Gore, to try and make sure that if anything does happen with this Gold Fury, like where someone tries to sneak it away, that they'll have some idea of what's going. And look how even the experience is too. I mean, maybe about half a level between Raffer and Rongyu. Same for Nika and Yarkor. Netroid and Vote are so close, or Dardes and Shinto. They're keeping this one basically perfectly balanced. Wherever Hindu Man is right now, I'm sure that he is very personally pleased with the level of balance that we're seeing here so far. But kind of as we've been alluding to, that means that the more balanced it is, the more balanced on a knife's edge it becomes, because of how easy it'll be to tip the scales in either direction. And I think SSG have found a window. They're the only ones near this Fury right now. 4 members of Sanguine and right. Sure, you lose Nika, but now you know for sure this is your Gold Fury. SSG, take it easy.
I was worried. I don't think they'd have enough time, so I like the fact that they're going for Pyromancer. If they could have, and they melted Nika, don't get me wrong, but if they had been able to super melt him, I guess anything that was a tier up, that Fire Giant could have been in danger.
It's popping off! I thought this would be a fight over objectives, but they're all already done, and Yarkor wreaking havoc in the backline. Cheerio's already gone. Remember, they lost Nika much earlier on in this little scramble as well here, of course. So Sanguine starting this one off on their own terms in a confident manner and looking to get aggressive into the backline. That's what I think that Cthulhu could do, and Yarkor's happy to play it.
And I love the fact that they hit their aggression then, right? Because one of the best ways that you can counter-engage on this fight if you're Space Station is Dazzling Offensive. If Amaterasu is able to turn around and get a 2-man, 3-man stun, Nika's gone. He's out of there. You don't have to worry about that, so you can just absolutely try to take him down. And is that question, Pyromancer versus Gold Fury. I think the kills that come out of this one are the one that then dictate the rest of the game, just because now you're looking at those cooldown timers we were talking about earlier. That's going to open up Fire Giant, opens up those towers. That 100, 200 gold lead that's been shifting between them for, 20 minutes so far is just going to disappear and escalate for one side. Just depends on whether or not SSG can answer that aggression.
Caster's trash. We were off by a full minute, Gore. It wasn't 20 minutes, it was 19 minutes here instead. But it certainly all did end up popping off here in this game, sort of as we expected. Obviously, coming out of game, don't worry, we're working on getting us back into the action right away. Don't worry about missing out on anything. We've got everything slowed down here for a moment. So this is kind of exactly what we're building up to right this moment, where Sanguine or either one of these teams get a big fight. And sort of as we were thinking, the Fire Giant is right over there waiting on the backside of this fight. Even if Sanguine don't get any more kills, they've already taken care of Nika and Cheerio, I believe, up to this point. So that's the 5v3 advantage if they want to move back towards grabbing fire, and they've got the best confirm on the map with that final judgment.
And just, again, trying to replay the end of it in my mind, I think the only big ult that had just been used, maybe there was a Nemesis ult that was thrown out, but really it's just the Cthulhu as of right now. No final judgment, so you still have a great secure, at least in terms of the Thoth. So you have a lot of places to maybe fight in that area, and I think that's going to open up that avenue and that option even more so for Sanguine. But I always, especially because they've been so easy, 2 hunters are still alive. 2 hunters and 1 nice tanky elephant that can lead the way for them to get in. So I think, you look at a team fight like this, and it almost feels like it could be done. But I have just belief that Dardez and Vote are really the 2 kind of carries that could turn this around if they get that prime engagement, or at least re-engagement on somebody from Sanguine, maybe just taking 1 step too far.
And it feels like to me, Gore, I wonder if Space Station's calculation was a bit off, because they tried to commit in to try and stop the Pyromancer, but they burned Nika and the Pyro so quickly that Yarkor was able to dash in, transform right away, and Cheerio never even got to play Smite in that fight. He was taken out of it almost instantly, and then suddenly they'd overcommitted to a bad fight. I almost wonder if they weren't expecting it to all happen so quickly, and for Sanguine to be so willing to pull the trigger.
It kind of feels like they thought Nika was going to be able to buy more time initially, and then they were like, okay, well, that plus Pyromancer, we should be able to rotate no problem. I just don't think they thought all of a sudden Sanguine would just jump in and jump on them like a tiger that is just absolutely hungry at that point. And the fact that Yarkor was so quick to pull the trigger, I think, was maybe the best thing for Sanguine.
All right, we should be ready to get back into the action, and yes, Yarkor just removed Cheerio. And now some trouble for Dardez as well underneath the tower. Good Aegis from Dardez means that he is in no danger, but way on the back, Panatom is lurking. That means Sanguine have to basically Space Station have to completely fall back. Yarkor is low, but I like this idea from Sanguine. They should have all the pressure to take down this fire. I mean, who can come in safely? Maybe Vote can contest it with an ultimate, but this should not be an easy contest for Space Station at all. Nearby is Raffer. He doesn't even have the Dharmic Pillars to help contest. As Yarkor comes off the objective, they're looking to lock down the elephant off to the side. They get him, but they're still to Vote. Used a little bit too early. He won't be able to contest the objective. It's down to 900, and Sanguine confirm it. Dardez couldn't steal it, but look way over on the side. Nika is dashing in, and he's got the ultimate available, so Dazzling Offensive Stuns one. Nika gets the double kill. Yarkor's low on the back, which means that even a triple is in line as well as they get the 3rd kill. Space Station punish Sanguine perfectly.
Raffer had to do 2 things there, right? His secondary goal was steal Fire Giant. His primary goal? Make it last long. Just make it so they feel uncomfortable trying to do anything. Vote did the same thing. His ult comes out, and it's just stopping Sanguine from trying to get this Fire Giant any lower. The longer they wait, the more time Nika, Cheerio have to respawn and get back into the engagement. That's a teleport from Nika that lets him rotate in, but that's what you need out of your solo laner. He got so melted early on, and now, we were talking about that Fire Giant potentially being a big swing. It means almost nothing for Sanguine. I mean, you keep it on Netroid and Wrong U. That could end up amounting to something, but with the other 3 still dead or respawning now, you're just trying to figure out how to get into the next fight. There's no chance for you to take down a tower, and realistically, it ends up paying off a little bit more for Space Station than Sanguine.
They are just that bit out in the lead, right? About 1,500 gold in their favor, and the big beneficiary now is Nika, who's level 20 as opposed to Yarkor, level 18. About 4,000 experience, about 2,000 gold or so in favor of SSG, but not going to be tremendously impactful. Being down 2,000 this late into the game is not backbreaking by any means, so Sanguine can certainly fight in. But Space Station did such a good job, Gore, putting Sanguine in an unwinnable position. They couldn't back off the Fire Giant at that point, not when it was that low with Dardez and everyone nearby, and they could certainly just walk in and finish it. And they spent so much time worrying about Raffer. He couldn't steal it, but if he locks you down on a lava pool or on the ring, he's got kill potential all of a sudden with that dash. So they felt like they had to kill him, and they couldn't just burst the objective. And This is what Space Station does all
Yeah.
the time. They make you feel like all your choices are bad.
And hey, if you have to choose between A and B, and no matter what, you're going to come out at a loss, that's just a win for Space Station. It's a literal win-win scenario for them. If you kill the Fire Giant too fast, but they win a fight much like that, then, well, at the end of the day, the Fire Giant meant nothing. If you don't kill the Fire Giant and they're able to get in and potentially steal it, then you've now lost Fire Giant to Space Station Gaming, and they could still try to win a fight on the end. So I think Sanguine maybe jumped in too fast there, at least on the team fight, and then didn't have quite as much time as they thought to secure that Fire Giant cleanly with the kills and the fights they had. Now it's just what they can do with the remaining aggression. Rongyu still has it for another minute and a half, just a little under, so that's good sustain that's going to be coming down for the Terra, and Netroid has it, who is just going to be the tower killer. Once they're both in the fight, I expect to see them put some pressure onto Space Station.
Sanguine outside the Tier 1 and Space Station are defending their Tier 1. 23 minutes into the game, they will yield no ground over to Sanguine. And really all the towers basically are still up. 11 of the 12 we started with are still standing. It's just the solo Tier 1 that's fallen at this point. So there's still a ton of ground to be made up by both of these teams before they can start thinking about realistically ending this game. And Sanguine, still with the Fire Giant buff on Netroid, want to try and force it here in mid.
It's just whether or not they can. I mean, Yarkor has his ult, and that's really been their go button. Although it's also been this ult from Panatom, but you can't chase down a Hebo like that. That's why he's such a good counter.
It's going to be basically impossible for him to chase him down through that carpet. The slows irrelevant at that point, and obviously Panatom even slowed in his own right. And without that ultimate available for them from Panatom, it looks like Sanguine are just going to give up the ghost. They're done, falling back, and not going to get anything out of this Fire Giant. I mean, Space Station already did a lot of work to strip away the value of this FG, but even the little bit on Rongyu and Netroid won't end up mattering.
Yeah, I was hoping to highlight it and then have it come around and be some big pillar where they do still get a Tier 2, but that Fire Giant buff's gone now. It meant virtually nothing. Now this Primal Fury, especially if it goes the way of Space Station, can make it a bit more impactful in the next 2 minutes on that right-hand side when that Fire Giant respawns, because Rongyu and the rest of Sanguine, I think they're going to have a little bit more trouble confirming an objective if they don't get such a stellar team fight to start off their Fire Giant like they did last time.
Well, that's twice now we've seen Sanguine willing to trade Fury for Pyro. Pyro not even confirmed. Sanguine just barely get it. Boy, was Nika close. I don't know if you can give this guy Amaterasu anymore. He's just too nuts on it. And now aggressively chasing out Panatom. Vote with the ultimate was there to back up, but final judgment, point blank, barrel stuffed from Shinto gets the 1-for-1 trade, but Yarkor left all alone. Perfect Dharmic Pillars to isolate him, and Space Station have too much damage. Now it's the 4v3, and Netroid low has to back. Shinto half HP can even come out and afford to contest SSG.
Man, I still feel like Cthulhu's strong, and I think we're going to see that throughout the game. I think Yarkor can still have a huge impact, but I feel like Space Station have a little bit more about this Cthulhu figured out right now than what Yarkor is prepared to deal with. I mean, even with Thorns popped there, I like that he saves the ult, but at the end of the day, there's nothing you can do in a position like that. Do you walk through the Dharmic Pillars and strip your protections even more? That seems like a bad idea. Can you run? Nope. They're just going to kill you by the time you get there. Again, it's another instance of Space Station putting themselves into a win-win scenario. No matter what Yarkor chooses to do there, it doesn't advance anything for Sanguine. And so he almost just has to die without trying to figure anything else out, because otherwise it's just even more of a victory for Space Station. And that's going to be hard to avoid. I mean, they're grouping really well. Even now, 4 of them are all just nearby each other, that in case any engagement pops off, they can be there at the ready. And I don't believe this finish.
Well, they're going to start it up. Space Station have the Fire Giant down to half HP, but Sanguine are here. Space Station end up giving it up, and Raffer falls down to about half health. Rongyu took some poke too, but remember, they got a little bit of sustain on their side, helping them out with the Rongyu being able to drop that monolith. It's not a lot. You can see it's barely helping them out, but it's something.
Which is weird, and it is one of those things, it feels like it does more every time, late game, but I feel like level 16, you probably don't have it at least as high as you want, and you're not keeping up with everybody as much as you want, so like you said, it's not going to heal quite as much as they would like, but anything's better than nothing, and I think that's the same mentality Space Station have. I mean, they have just a little bit of healing spattered throughout it, whether it's lifesteal or just Nika having the ability to swap stance and heal himself up a little bit. That small source of sustain will end up being big for the teams on either side, just because you don't have to full retreat in the event things go wrong. Same thing for Netroid. If he has to get forced back to base, that passive is going to help him get right back into it. So Sanguine needs some full kills here to make sure Sanguine actually stay down and don't come back to bite him.
Shinto takes a little bit of damage. Space Station clearly want to get aggressive. Rapper getting in range to drop a big Dharmic Pillars, but there's the ultimate Netroid to get him out. Yarkor ults in response. That does control too as Panatom tries to battle Cheerio over in the jungle, but Yarkor doing enough to keep the squad at bay. Cheerio goes forward. Big crushing wave brings Panatom low, but still lives thanks to the shield and might even be able to make it out of there. But look how far back SSG have pushed Sanguine. I don't know if Sanguine with all those ults down are in any shape to contest this fire.
The only ult still up for Space Station, though, is going to be Dardez, which, don't get me wrong, that Stinger has a bite to it. It will hurt you, but I don't know if it's going to be a big difference maker here. I'm actually kind of surprised to see that he maybe doesn't throw it out for some confirmed kills, although there wasn't necessarily a good position there to try and find it. So it gives him an advantage in the Fire Giant pit, standing around it, but there's not much either team can do on the back burner of that, so they're just waiting, farming up. And then I think we'll just kind of see a wash, rinse, repeat. But with Yarkor backing just now, I feel like that gives Space Station here more of an advantage to move forward and try to burn this Fire Giant.
Yeah, they were going to get a cleaner reset, and they're melting it. Sanguine aren't going to make it in time. There's just no way. Space Station confirmed the Fire Giant, and Sanguine caught napping yet again. And this objective control has been weak for him, man. The Furies have all gone down without any contest in this game. Traded out for Pyro, and now the Fire Giant as well. Sanguine got to find a way to get this done from defense.
That was just, I think, good silence, good execution from Space Station, and unfortunately just one bad back from Sanguine, maybe a little bit too late overall for Yarkor, but it does put him in a position. I mean, all 5 ults back available for them, still looking for some recharges there for Space Station. They can go in.
Yarkor's going in, but he's getting melted right away, but so is Cheerio. 1-for-1 jungle for solo, and Vote takes to the sky, recognizes Netroid's low in the back, settles for Shinto up close instead. At this point, Raffer is too low to still be a part of the fight, and no one can contest Shinto's range here at this point, but Vote still stepping forward, breaking the monoliths to not give any heals. It looks like Space Station are going to continue this battle up after all. Raffer, even low, is choosing to stick around as well. They're going to get aggressive. Dharmic Pillars locks them all in, but Vote gets knocked up. Final Judgment, almost enough to kill him, and how can Vote stick around this low? Both of these teams, even when they get Fire Giant, even when they have an advantage, really can't afford to get too aggressive.
Every time I see a Hunter get that low and immediately they go into the jungle, I have to look down to see if they have Aussie. The Aussie passive is so ridiculous at this stage of the game that you're able to walk into the jungle, almost full heal yourself off of 1 camp. Still, Vote takes 2 camps and instead full heals himself, and that's going to be the go button. Space Station want this tower.
They do pop in Frenzy to secure it. Vote rolling in aggressively as Netroid gets out of there. But Nika's in the backline. Netroid's low, and Nika claims that life for himself. So Space Station able to take care of the Tier 2 tower over in right. They'll soon have Cheerio back with them as well, as he has respawned. And this game's been close basically the whole time, but Space Station seem to keep finding these small little bits, these tiny advantages, and climbing further and further out of reach. Now the Tier 2 tower in mid. All this gold on the map being farmed out by SSG to extend their lead even more. And Panatom might be caught out.
Yeah, this is an unfortunate spot to be in. Good silence, but a better blink, I think, coming down from Panatom. At least keeps him safe. Maybe, costs too much just to get out there. But you're slowing things down slightly, right? Those archers going down doesn't stop SSG from taking the tower. Maybe stops them from getting the Phoenix afterward. Unfortunately, you don't have much to do in terms of contesting anything else that's on the map right now. I think not only that Primal Fury, but you look over towards that Pyromancer. If they want it, it's Space Stations. So Sanguine have to start looking at a better engage, and unfortunately, I just don't know where it's going to come from. Either of the tanks, whether it's Yarkor or Rong Yu, if they go in, they're just going to get shredded down like it's nothing, and I feel like Space Station, it's part of the reason these Dharmic Pillars have been so big. This Terra hasn't really been able to accomplish too much. 1-0-5 hasn't been detrimental, but I haven't necessarily seen a play where I thought Rong Yu set up the entire team for this, and that's maybe costing them a little bit more for Sanguine than they'd like.
It's got to be Panatom. I mean, look where he is in the player damage charts. He's behind Raffer, right? I mean, we keep saying it when he locks in this Nemesis. He's just flat out not doing enough for them. And look how much damage Shinto and Yarkor are doing. If they were even getting 10k from Panatom, we'd be in a different game right now, but he's just not able to find these spots on this pick, and I really feel like they're picking it so it can't go over to the opposition, and I just don't know if it's worth it when he ends up being a non-factor like this.
Especially because, look at the slash line for Yarkor. He's 1-4. You're picking Nemesis to make it so that your Cthulhu theoretically goes 4-0-5 at any given time. Like, he's supposed to be undying at this. So Spacestation have figured it out. I think waiting until the late game, it's allowed Vote to have this build that's perfect for burning him down. Now he does have that Aussie online, so if he ever does get low, I think he's not going to care too much. Still a little bit of a clinch moment, but he's going to be fine with it. That, along with the Dharmic Pillar Shred, along with the fact that you have a second Hunter, by the way, still in Dardes, I just don't know that Yarkor is going to be able to survive through a lot of these engagements. So it almost feels like you're picking this Nemesis to make sure they don't have it, just so they don't have as easy a time to kill Yarkor, and yet they didn't care anyway. So now you're just detrimental to your team. And, I mean, look at it. It's 3 times as much damage coming down from Cherio right now.
Yeah.
If Panatom gets one good engagement, that changes everything. And there's still a little bit of window for that to happen, but it's finding that opening that's just been so difficult for him all game.
And Cheerio has died 3 times too, right? It's not as if Cheerio has been under less pressure. Probably, I think, more pressure than Panatom has been under this game, just in terms of how much he's been focused out. Panatom has struggled with this matchup into the Hopwa. It's going to be so hard for him to lock him down. Raffer has a ton of ability to deal with Dharmic Pillars in the Silence. It's just not a good game for him. As an all-in commit, Raffer drops the Dharmic Pillars, but it's Sanguine that are aggressing onto the backline. Yarkor is able to find a nice route, as Nika has to use the Dazzling Offensive just to retreat, but Final Judgment is down. The Earth and Fury is down. A lot of ults used by Sanguine.
Cooldown-wise, it doesn't make a good trade, but that blink from Yarkor gets him out of the Dharmic Pillars, and I think makes it maybe a little bit better for them to aggress in here, since there's not enough ults for Spacestation.
Cheerio just kind of bodied the whole Sanguine team, blinks in, water hands, and then crushing waves Yarkor on the way out. And now I don't know if Sanguine can say anything about this. This Fire Giant, Space Station are starting it up. Now Raffer is low, SSG are back on the way in, and they have a chance to contest. The Fire Giant's low, Panatom right over the wall, trying to see what he can do. Has Cheerio locked down, showing up finally as Vote takes care of Shinto in trade, but Netroid's low, has to leave. Yarkor is low, can't help, and now Rongyu getting slowed by the Astral Arrows. Vote rolls in aggressively, and Dardes gets the kill credit. Nika locks down Yarkor. No way! The Dazzling Offensive is back up again, but apparently it is, and he's able to cut down Yarkor at 3-for-1 for SSG.
Now, I don't mean to question them, but I am going to question them a little bit. It feels like there's still 40 seconds left with no one on Sanguine, or these 2 members trying to defend it. They had a little bit more health. Maybe they can get aggressive, but this is still a good end state for Space Station. They can get aggressive, at least take 2 Phoenixes, but I don't know, that Titan looks like it's in just enough jeopardy. So does Raffer, so that might be the call for some safe play coming down from Space Station, but that's how this game is going now. You're all level 20. You're all going to die for 60 seconds, maybe 50 seconds at this point. If you're gone for the next team fight, and if this Fire Giant goes the way that it looks like it's going to, then Space Station are perfectly set up to try and find themselves a win. Sanguine are going to be playing nothing but defense.
Panatom almost with that slice and dice, maybe just a little too early, and SSG ended up confirming their second Fire Giant of the game. And this is getting a little bleak now if you're a Sanguine fan. You're down so much gold here at this point. Space Station have all the momentum, all the control of the map with that mid-Phoenix down and Fire Minions to worry about with FG, enhanced FG on all 5 members as well. And isn't it crazy? It feels like Sanguine are the team that's getting poked out of every fight, but they're the team with the Thoth on it that I thought would be doing all the poke, but they've not been able to handle all this damage from Dardes. Vote has been using his ultimate relatively early in fights, at times too, just to provide some extra damage from range. That's what Silver Branch passive can do for him once he hits that second ability. I mean, SSG are just starting to really control Sanguine, and Sanguine can't find their footing.
I mean, Sanguine are consistently killing Cheerio, and Cheerio at this point should be happy with it because they're all-inning their jungler, and then you get to see Vote go 3-0-6, 4-1-5 there for Dardes. You know, the 2 Hunters aren't getting touched at all in the back line. And like you said, even though Shinto theoretically should be able to get that pressure back, every time they all in on Cheerio, Shinto is left almost seemingly out to dry. But Sanguine are looking for an ambush.
looks like it. They had 3 waiting around the corner, but there's 5 of SSG here. Yarkor has the ultimate forced out, and instead of fighting under their Phoenix, they're fighting out in the middle of the lane. Let's see if this works for them without that 6th man to help out. Yarkor and Panatom are both low, and so Vote uses the ultimate, knows they're in kill threshold, but doesn't quite have enough. And Nika keeps moving forward. Shinto flattens him with the final judgment, and I think Sanguine, by stepping out of their base, catching SSG off guard, have delayed this siege for a little bit.
I was gearing up to look specifically at their Phoenix defense, which, I mean, that was maybe the better example. It's pretty good as far as they're concerned on the side of Sanguine. If you're able to defend your Phoenix without the help of your Phoenix, then you're in a good spot. So the showcasing, I think most importantly, that the team fights can still go their way without any assistance. That, you know, the map may be playing a little bit of a factor in that because of the way Spacestation were positioned. There wasn't an easy escape for them. But you're not taking extra Phoenix damage. You know, Raffer's not burned down from anything extra. It was just 5-on-5. We set up 3 around the corner and kind of hoped that things would go well. And the counter engage from Nika didn't get the dazzling offensive off. And that's where that Amaterasu maybe falls apart. If she can get back there and find a couple stuns or an ult, then that's going to be phenomenal. But when that ult doesn't go off, you just kind of end up being a body that was distracting slightly, but not enough to do anything pivotal against Sanguine there.
Look at this last item for Dardes. He picks up the Bulwark of Hope for a little bit of extra magic defense to keep him alive. A little surprising, but he still is doing plenty of damage now, only behind Yarkor, passing Yarkor as the highest damage dealer that we've got, ahead of Shinto as well. And then after Yarkor and Shinto, it's a long time before you find anyone else from Sanguine. Netroid's there with that 17,000, but still nowhere near enough value into this game from Panatom. Sanguine thinking about taking another fight away from their Phoenixes. I don't know if I can advise 2 in a row, fellas. Phoenixes are pretty helpful in these fights.
Yeah, they're nice. They are very nice to have, although they have got their mid up to the point where it's about to respawn. Fire minions are still there in mid, so you have to be worried about it. They're just running the same playback. They're all sitting by the same corner. I think Spacestation recognized it this time. They're going to go for a 4-1 split, maybe a 3-2 split. Just depends on where they want to get aggressive.
Shinto does a lot of damage, but so does Cheerio at this point. It's a 3-1 split, maybe 4-1. It looks like they're bringing Cheerio back over to left. Wrong U gets locked down, and the left Phoenix is already gone and got melted so quickly. Shinto in the back is in trouble too. He ends up falling right away. Space Station are collapsing on Sanguine, and they don't know what to do or where to go. They've already lost left Phoenix. Mid Phoenix is right behind, and SSG still have all 5 members here. Yarkor, Silence, taking all this damage before he can ever get the ult off and has to retreat back to their base. But how do they keep this damage away from their Titan? Dardes is a machine gun. Vote is a machine gun. Yarkor goes up into the ultimate. Wrong U trying to keep Dardes out, but the crushing wave provides too much backup for him. Good knockups coming there from Yarkor, but the Titan still taking too much damage, not doing enough to Space Station to keep them out of their base, and Nika keeps Netroid zoned entirely out. The Titan takes too much damage, and Space Station able to claim this one in 40 minutes up against Sanguine.
Man, I said it at the beginning of the game, but 7-4 and 7 is what Nika ends that game at, and I was kind of frightened of that Amaterasu in minute 1, and I think it makes sense here as we approach the end of the game exactly why that is, and it's just because it's so potent in that solo lane. But I actually wanted to highlight something you had mentioned at the very end there, that Bulwark of Hope pickup for Dardes. You know, we had talked about Shinto being maybe the counter, trying to deal some damage or poke at least to those backliners. You're getting magical protections. All of a sudden, that final judgment doesn't kill you. You get a shield afterward. We got to see it at the very end during the Titan siege as well, where he's just like, cool, I don't have a care in the world. I'm an Amuzan Cobb, one of the easiest hunters to kill in the world, and yet you can't do anything to stop me, and that's frightening.
And Nika's the hero, man. That play where he gets the near triple kill on the back of Sanguine getting the Fire Giant, that was huge to stabilize it. Sanguine could have ran away with it right then and there. An exciting set, living up to all the hype here so far. Get it back down to Dolson and Myth on the desk.
So we expect between these two teams a long one, nearly 40 minutes between SSG and Sanguine, but SSG able to get the win. I remember in Pixabands, I was curious that Shinto didn't pick up the Merlin, and I'm surprised at all if you guys at home aren't picking up Merlin now, as we have the Aang Merlin skin in-game with the Avatar Battle Pass. We got, of course, Zuko Susano and Korra Scotty as well throughout that Battle Pass. So, you know, Shinto maybe equips the Aang Merlin skin, gets into game next time around. Of course, he can't do that, but you sure can. Pick up the Avatar Battle Pass now in-game and get some of those sweet, sweet Avatar skins. Mifflin, You're here with me, though, to break down game number 1. Sanguine shot out of a cannon. They got a lot of kills early on. SSG, though, in typical SSG fashion, able to slow this game down and then ultimately overwhelm Sanguine down the stretch.
It's weird to say that SSG slowed down Sanguine, then took him to a late game teamfight phase, but you're exactly right. That's what happened. I think a lot of it comes down to Vote's performance was phenomenal. His snipes were good. He was always constantly finding damage on the priority targets. And Raffer comes to mind as well. Every single team fight that Spacestation won was initiated by Raffer just walking up to Yarkor, channeling the silence and allowing his team to really beat on him before he can get into the ultimate, maybe followed up by a knockup. Pretty often it wasn't even allowed to see that Cthulhu ult come out. That's a well-executed strategy from Space Station, and I think that's not something that's exclusive to working against Cthulhu. That's just the strength of Ganesh.
Agreed. I think kind of a double-pronged fork spear there, I guess, working against the Cthulhu. Dardes as well, great game on this AMC. It's those mid-lane hunters we have that conversation around, the ability-based, paying off big time here. Raffer, of course, you pointed out, 0-1. 11. Nika, though, 7-4-7. This Amaterasu, obviously first pick worthy now at this point. That's been no mystery here over the last few weeks, but specifically in Nika's hands, you got to be careful giving that over. So we talked about what SSG were able to get with that first pick slot, the advantage maybe of Dardes pulling a little extra weight in the ban phase. It's Nika on this Amaterasu running wild.
Yeah, of those 4 deaths, 2 of them were him going in 1 versus 5, 1 versus 4, while the rest of SSG was pulling Gold Fury, getting that for themselves, or taking down a tower in mid. It's Nika taking these well-calculated, risky plays to allow the rest of his team to kind of control the map. And even though he's sacrificing his life, he's not falling behind. They're within the realm of acceptable losses, and he respawns, comes back in to defend the Fire Giant or get the triple kill off of the Fire Giant afterward. That fight was initiated by Nika creating space for the Gold Fury. It's just, these guys know what they're doing. They're playing with these thin margins, and it's just working out for them. SSG are looking very strong.
That's right, that back end of that Fire Giant fight, so important for giving SSG that advantage in this game. I mean, if Sanguine are able to run away full 5 on the buff, then re-siege later on, things may be looking different here. But not to be. SSG take game number 1, picks and bans for game number 2. We're going to swap here, though. Sanguine will be in that first pick slot. I mean, if we're really kind of diving into the nitty-gritty, kind of the meta game of the pick and ban phase, does much change here if you're still target banning out Dardes if you're Sanguine, but SSG get 2 picks on the back end? Is it same mindset? Now you just get 2 priority picks if you're SSG instead of 1?
It depends on what Sanguine decide to prioritize for their first pick. They could look towards trying to force SSG off of something that they're going to value pretty highly. They could look towards something like Ola Run that's going to disrupt a lot of the team fight phase. Because they're in first pick now, and they're the ones throwing out the majority of the target bans, Aphrodite and Hera already coming out, they can also control what is let through. SSG have to make a decision now. If they ban Olarun, that will control the magical hunter field, but they're going to have to leave something like Nemesis open or Amaterasu, something along those lines. And I think Sanguine are definitely going to try and swoop those up as quickly as possible.
You point out the Olarun. Olarun's banned out here. Freya is as well. So we're following a very similar trend from what we had in game number 1. And remember, SSG's first lock-in, we talked about Nika plenty on that Amaterasu for good reason. He took over game 1 in some of those late fighting instances. Now, Merlin, I was surprised, kind of foregone by Sanguine and SSG down the stretch there. SSG going to ban out the Merlin this time, so Amaterasu's still available. But it's not, as Yamoja rather, still available, yes, but Yamoja is going to get locked in here by Sanguine, that Merlin taking the place of where that normal Yamoja ban goes, so a strong start for Sanguine.
It is good for Sanguine. I think SSG realized that's exactly what the trade is going to be. I think especially after how the pace of last game went, they can very much expect that Shinto would look towards the Merlin, remove that, but they do give up the best pressure support pick, some of the best out-of-combat healing and space control in a support possible. Yamoja is such an absolutely dominant pick that you're going to expect to see SSG likely go towards something a little bit more passive in the long lane, farm up for late. Rom fits that bill a little bit. The ultimate's going to be a very good counter tool to deal with the Riptide, to deal with the River's Rebuke from Yamoja.
Right.
I like the draft so far from both teams. This Amaterasu, though, man, you can't keep letting Nika have it.
I know, I agree, but you're rolling the dice, I think, also if you're SSG giving Wrong you this Yemoja. I mean, Rongyu is just so good, and Yemoja as well is one of the top tier, if not the top tier support pick nowadays. So I think both teams probably happy with what they've gotten in their first couple of waves. Jingwei as well, run back there from Netrioid, so no change as far as hunters go here in this one. Still the Jingwei for Netrioid, still the ROM for the vote. And so I'm going to go back to the Cthulhu here. Interesting. Ganesh still available. That was a lot of what kind of clipped those wings in game number 1. Maybe wouldn't be surprising to see SSG go back to it here in game 2.
I really would like to see them go back to it. If Raph doesn't take Ganesh right now, I think it's pretty likely that Sanguine are going to ban it out. I would have liked to see Netrioid pick something a little bit more aggressive in that Hunter role just to mash the pressure that Yemoja's going to be able to bring. Look for that kill potential in the long lane. But it fits their style right now. Sanguine's got a very late game-centric draft already. Cthulhu's looking to just level up in the soul lane. Yemoja's waiting for that team fight phase to start up. Jingwei wants to get a little bit of that crit online. It seems like both teams are pretty comfortable waiting for that late game phase. Again, we didn't even really see the first team fight in that last match until 21 minutes in. I think we might be looking at a little bit of parity there.
And look at this, the Snap AMC ban now from Sanguine on the back end. Take that one away from Dardes in the mid lane. Smart banning there, I think, from Sanguine here. Thor taken away, still jungles needed for both teams, and then a late Hell ban, so that's pretty interesting there. What do you think the mindset is from SSG taking Hell off the table?
Healing's real good. Paul made that god look real good. I haven't really seen too much Hell coming out from Shinto, but SSG's likely scrimmed with Sanguine in the past. They know what they've been working on, and it would have fit the draft pretty well. Hell is a god that can survive the early game all right. Her damage output's pretty high, but she is a little bit susceptible to ganks. But once Hell makes it into the late game, which is exactly what Sanguine is looking to do, she's potentially one of the most dominant healers and damage output that you could have out of the center of the map. So I think it's a pretty smart ban. SSG taking away the Nemesis here is likely going to force Panatom into something along the lines of a Mercury or a Pele. I like this pickup, and it's so strong in a Cthulhu as well.
I'm surprised, honestly, that Nemesis fell down this far in the pick ban phase. So strong. Panatom, I think, struggled a little bit on the Nemesis, finding that damage-centric impact in game number 1. So now a chance for Cherio to kind of try to flip that script for his team here, and it is going to be Thoth and Pele to round things out now for Sanguine. What did you think of the Thoth in game 1, and what do you think about this switch over to the Pele?
I like the switch to Pele in general. I think that Panatom really does hit his stride when he's playing these more aggressive picks. He doesn't really get the exact same playstyle. You can tell that he's looking to play aggressively when he's on that Nemesis. It doesn't normally really work out for him like it would on something like Pele. But Shinto's Thoth, this dude was almost single-handedly keeping him in the team fights. He was landing every single ability that he needed to. The poke from a range was good. When the rest of his team was floundering, he was sitting in mid at 3-0-1, just 2 levels up at one point. I think this Thoth has been very potent, and I'm not going to be upset with the fact that he's going back to it.
Morgan in the mid lane for Dardes. What are your initial gut reactions to that one?
Late game, I mean, with Polynomicon and Soul Reaver, he's got a super sick matchup into both Thoth, Pele, and Jingwei. If he's able to touch you with a stun, you're likely going to die before you even know what hit you. It's going to be a fantastic transformation targets on both teams. Turn into Yemoja, all of a sudden now you've got that nice wall. Turn into Cthulhu, you can match that team fight potential. There's a lot that this Morrigan can do, but into Pele, it's a little bit of a hard matchup. She's going to have to play pretty safe in the early.
Yeah, initial reactions to Morgan, I feel like it's very rarely a bad thing, especially when it's Dardes on the other side playing. It has been a weekend of 2-game sets. Can Sanguine break the mold, or will SSG send them home early? We'll dive in to find out.
I don't know, Dulcin. This is a pretty scary draft that Spacestation have at their disposal. Still Finch and Gormizer here on the call. Still Doug, making sure you can see all the action. And Gorman, if I'm Sanguine, if I'm a Sanguine fan, if I've ever known Sanguine, I'm scared about this draft that Spacestation has. All the things they had last time that worked. The Ama, the Rom, the Ganesh. And now they have the Nemesis plus the Morgan for Dardes. I mean, that's bad. It's bad, dude.
Yeah, last time we were talking about it, we came into it and I said both teams have 2 picks that it's kind of like, depending on how they perform, maybe you could win, right? The Thoth we saw didn't quite hit the mark, although I don't think was the problem. The Nemesis there for Panatom didn't work. And we had mentioned this Pele in passing as something that has worked more for Panatom than we've seen out of the Nemesis, so maybe that'll be something. But Yeah, that's 5 just purely strong picks that come out of Space Station. I mean, me and you were even talking about it earlier in the first picks and bans. You were wondering whether or not Morgan was banned competitively or not because no one was playing her, and it's like, why not? And so maybe Dardes can showcase why she does deserve to still be around a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can make an argument that these are the best 5. I mean, not Ganesh, right? Emoja is the best support you can have, but everyone else could have an argument for just being the best god you can pick in that role right now. But Sanguine do have some really strong picks for them, right? I mean, Panatom is back on a jungler that we know he can perform well on, like you covered. Wrong Yu is on Yamoja, the best support who can play right now. Nechu is on his comforting way. And Yarkor is going to be going to the afterlife. Cheerio with an early 1 minute into the game gank, finding first blood for SSG.
And look, Finch, I'm going to go ahead and say that's a bad sign in my eyes. I don't know that it's getting much better. Like you said, there's a lot of pillars here for Sanguine. There were a lot of pillars last game. Maybe Wrong Yu this time around on this Yamoja I think can be much more impactful. And honestly, that's what they were missing. Wrong Yu and Panatom kind of didn't really exist game 1, at least not in any matter that made a difference in team fights. This game, they're definitely going to be able to impact it. But I'm looking at the fact that Dardes is going to be changing into this Amaterasu. You've got 2 dazzling offenses. It's just going to be deadly.
Oh, good work from Yarkor to not let that happen again. I'd have had a panic attack, but yes, good work to stay focused on other stuff there, Gore, because no way Yarkor dies twice in a row to that Nemesis gank, right? No world of that.
It's too close.
Is the case. Yeah, too close. He made sure that he was able to make it back to safety. Can we say the same for both, though? Taking quite a bit of damage in Panatom now on the left side of the map. And certainly is considering a gank in, hesitating even more than I think I would here, but now closing this distance, blink into the knock-up, beats mean nothing, and Panatom gets the return kill. Not going to be entirely outdone by Cheerio here yet again, and already having an impact.
At least finding something in return. And on the opposite side of the map, I think you can let Yarkor die once, and you're not happy about it, but you're not really riding home and saying, you know what, 10 minutes, we must F6. There's no chance for us to win this victory that we want. You're fine. You're going to be able to let him farm up. You're already going to be struggling, I think, against Nika, who, again, is a one-man army on an Amaterasu at any given time anyway. So just let him know that he has to play a little safer.
Cheerio able to find the speed buff in vain. I think stuff like that is what makes Cheerio such a good jungler, as Wrong Yu is able to make it out of trouble, is that he gets the first blood with an off-the-wall 1 minute gank in solo we almost never see. And then when Panatom looks to counter by going to gank the left lane, Cheerio's like, no way I'm catching him over there, right? So let me go to his speed. I know it's spawning right now. Mine is about to spawn, and is able to strip that away so he can still make sure he's stripping farm away from Panatom, still keep his team ahead. And I don't think Cheerio gets quite enough credit a lot of the time for what he does with his team, because Dardes is so nuts, Nika is so nuts, this whole team is so good, but Cheerio is certainly a big part of it.
And being able to make a big impact. Last game, I think he actually had a huge impact, and you look at his slash line, you're like, where? And you look at his damage, you can see the numbers were still there. I think his impact last game was being the lightning rod. I mean, it was just so much easier to kill him as Hebo than anybody else on that team that they would all in their damage onto Cheerio. And so he ended up playing this huge pivotal role for the team by dying, which is not normally something you'd think as making a difference, but it kept voting Dardes safe. And maybe he's looking to change that up this time around. I think he's on an infinitely better god to be able to get in and get out and stay alive in a lot of these cases. But I also think that if he has to be the lightning rod, then so be it. But I think, you know, keeping Dardes alive, keeping Vote alive will always be worthwhile. If anything, Cheerio's just going to have more engage this time around, so it's even more awkward for Sanguine. Because Panatom, with one good gank so far, hasn't still made that big of a mark just yet.
Wow, Shinto still under trouble. They're going to dive underneath the mid-tier 1 Dardes, make sure they get the kill, but the Yamoja ultimate should force them to overcommit. Yarkor is here as well, trying to match this rotation in. That Amaterasu was the mid-lane Dardes, but Yarkor rotates in and gets a double kill. It's a 3-for-1 in favor of Sanguine, and Nika being pulled back in by the Riptide, pulled back in by all the control from Sanguine. They can't get anything more, Gore, but I think a 3-for-1 is already plenty good.
Yeah, remember when we were talking about how Wrong Yu could look better on this Yamoja? That was such a good wall. Good placement, to the point where Dardes had to stand there and take, I think, 2 tower shots after all that aggression. So good kills, I think, for Space Station. I think good aggression. It was interesting, but even better from Wrong Yu in this play. And that is the difference maker for Sanguine as a whole. And so I'm excited to see this support play more than anything, because that Terra, didn't quite hit the mark. It was easy to highlight the Nemesis since she was so low on damage, but I think the Terra didn't get the engagements they needed, didn't have the setup they needed, and this is what Rongyu can do in the right hands, is just set up the potential for his team skyrockets with him on something that has this much.
Aggression onto Nika here in solo. Yarkor gets there a bit early, and Nika falls early. You got to stop this guy from getting to all the impact we know he can have, and Yarkor already doing it. Already 3-1-1 in the solo lane on this Cthulhu pick. 1-0-4 for Panatom. And don't they just look so much better as a squad? Those two in particular as a combo, their solo jungle, how they can work together here with Panatom on this Pele. It's just letting him be more active.
Yeah, it just feels better, doesn't it? And that's something, it was very weird. Phase 1, it was don't let Sanguine get the meta picks. That's a bad idea. If Sanguine get the meta picks, they're just going to thrash you. They play what everyone else plays. They just did it better than everyone else. Now, let them have the meta picks. At least for some of them, they don't make a difference on them. You grab that Nemesis. Absolutely, let Panatom have it if he wants it, because it's not anything that's impactful. I like the fact that they're finding something comfortable. It's the same thing we're seeing, kind of in parallel to what Obey has done, where it's just like you have to forget what everyone is saying is intrinsically just the best. And play what's good for you. Play what you can play at the same level that they're playing these gods that are quote-unquote the best, because that is what's going to keep you in this game more. And Panatom, if that means that you're forcing people to ban Thor, you're picking Pele who has a 30% win rate, but you're the 30%, that's all that matters to you, right? Like, as long as you're able to get in there and do it, let Lasber take it and tank the win rate sometimes. You can come in and get that 30% win, at least look good on it.
Certainly has looked good on it so far here for Panatom, but it's still early days for Sanguine. I mean, this lead really is not a lead. It's a very, very close game here still right now, just where things have gone well for Sanguine in the early. So as happy as I am that Sanguine are looking good again, I don't want to get ahead of myself as Panatom being chased out, but Pele's so fast and elusive. Now that he knows he has backup from Rongyu, gets aggressive. Look at that ultimate, it's so good from Rongyu, but Cheerio just turns around and does more damage. Cheerio's a mad lad. Shinto steals the kill with the final judgment. That's how I choose to classify it, as another good Riptide comes through from Rongyu. He just plays this Yamoja so well, but now the Darming Pillars means that he's caught out instead. Yarkor trying to provide the peel, but it's too much damage. A 2-for-1 in favor of SSG.
Man, twice there were straight, amazing Riptides from Rongyu. Unfortunately, Spacestation turned it very much into a we're not locked in here with you, you're locked in here with us moment. Maybe biting off a little more than they can chew for Raffer. The damage still available. But the fact that you can just turn it around, Cheerio recognizes, you know what, I'm not getting anywhere out of this. I'll just kill you instead. It's not only a rare play, but I think it just shows that Spacestation aren't letting this get to their head. And much like you were saying, we were maybe getting a little ahead of ourselves. You can look good on Sanguine as much as you want. You can't really counter that. If Cherry is just going to turn around and 1v2 you and come out with a kill, even if it costs his life, then you have to figure out some other set of follow-up there. And the only reason he dies is because Shinto can shoot through the wall. If that isn't available there, Nemesis is alive. Spacestation walk away happy with that fight.
Really impressive from Cheerio, man. I think just the wherewithal to turn around. I mean, obviously, it's his only option, right? Because the ultimate from Rongyu is so good, he cannot leave. But it just recognizing it quickly enough that he can get in, win the damage race. Panatom looked as though that was the last thing he expected to suddenly be in the middle of, was a 2v1 going the other direction. And this is just what Spacestation could do at times. And I talked about how they make it so that all your choices are bad. Well, that time, even when you make the best play for you, it ends up being bad. And Cheerio comes out on top. I will happily be a Cheerio stan, man, but he plays so well.
Still looking for it, right? I think that's the other thing. You see someone like that, you get aggressive, almost punished for it. I guess because he wasn't punished for it, he's more likely to continue being aggressive because he knows he can turn it around now. That's going to change a lot, I think, in my mind, for the pace of Spacestation. Sanguine have been looking for these fights. I mean, we've got more kills now than we had through the first 30 minutes of last game, right? And it's just the fact that Sanguine are trying to force Spacestation to be behind in this early game, because we already highlighted late game. I'm leaning all the way towards the red. The Chaos side has everything I want in a late game team comp. But Sanguine know that they can maybe force them to fall behind early. Unfortunately, it's backfired. They're about 1,000 gold down now, and it's trying to find these engagements or maybe make that difference. It's actually faltered for Sanguine.
You could tell they wanted it. Raffer used the dash to get in, and Cheerio gets the kill. Airstrike over the wall gets Netrioid out. But you could see it. Space Station wanted that kill, and they shut down Panatom, who's been having a great game. Riptide allows Wrongu to escape, but Space Station continue to skulk around the jungle to look for more to strip the red buff. It hopefully belongs to them, but Sanguine are here in numbers. Wrongu, Shinto, and Netroid all here to play some defense. But look how much damage Wrongu took, isolated there to the left and silenced by Raffer. Cheerio takes some damage too. Final Judgment, just not enough damage. And the Dazzling Offensive means they might be able to get another. Nika takes care of one. Panatom at least gets the return. Yarkor is here now to say hello as Raffer ends up falling in trade. It's a double kill for Panatom's Pele. He steps in to clean up a couple more kills, but Cheerio answers back. Shinto takes care of Dardes. A bloodbath here near the red buff.
I mean, Shinto's so low, but so is everyone on SSG. Cheerio is one hit away, and Shinto, we've already seen him shoot through the wall. I was wondering if they were maybe going to play a little, like, hyper-aggressive is the only term I could think. Cheerio with almost no mana couldn't have escaped him, but I like the call. Slow roll it. You got a solid fight from Sanguine there, and showcases why I think, Space Station, as good as this comp can be, it's not the end-all, be-all. Things can still fall apart for you. I think that's the pillars of Sanguine and what they have. Shinto on this Thoth, 2-1 and 3s, looking cleaner so far. The damage seems to be a little more consistent, although he was towards the top last game as well. But Yarkor and Wrongu feel to be hitting a better stride this time around. Even though you had that unfortunate first blood, since then Yarkor is 4-0 and 5, so he's very happy on this Cthulhu.
Having a great game so far as Wrongu gets aggressive, locking in Dardes, who uses the Changeling ultimate to transform. No, he actually does it. It was the beads coming out from him, and it was not enough. Shinto able to lock him down. They committed the ultimates, though, and it's hard to get away when they're willing to lock those down. So once again, Dardes did not use the ultimate, didn't have it available, and Sanguine find one more pick, but what can they do with it?
Yeah, that's always the question. What can you gain afterward? And as of right now, I don't know that they need to gain too much. I mean, pressure in mid's going to be nice. But really, I'm looking at it, about 2 minutes ago, there was a 1,000 gold lead for Space Station. Now it's come to mostly equal, a little bit even in favor of Sanguine. And it's just a smidge. It means almost nothing. But the fact that you were able to pull the reins back that hard showcases that Sanguine are still looking for those kind of picks, right? Not the what can we get afterward, but what does this get us immediately, right? What are we opening up for ourselves? And in this case, it was just taking away Space Station's lead. Now you can go into equal footing onto a Gold Fury, maybe onto a tower. Maybe you can pick off Raffer if Wrongu so chooses to lock him down. Those are the things they get to do now.
Well, Dash doesn't land, and Wrongu in a lot less trouble as a result. That was almost certainly a kill there, considering how much damage they had for him. Yarkor loops around topside. Not much comes from it. Ends up meeting Mika, but still, not much comes from it. Just that Wrongu is still very low on HP. So he'll take the back and should have plenty of time. Space Station aren't moving towards any objectives or anything like that. So Sanguine could find a small reset. And you talked about it, how this game has been much faster than what we had in Game 1. A lot more action here with 19 kills already in almost 14 minutes. But things are slowing back down again. Remember, these are two teams that are happy to wait to the late. Just because the game was fast early doesn't mean it has to stay that way, since they both have comps that'll scale very well into the late. No reason why they couldn't slow the pace right back down.
Fight really hard in the early game, chill out for the mid game, then come back for the finale. It's a story in 3 parts for them, and they're playing it perfectly, at least as of right now. Because until, it becomes easy to get a Fury or a Pyromancer without the other team, I don't think we're going to see too much out of them. And I was, 18, 19 minutes in to the last game where we finally saw that come through. Maybe look for Nika to try and play Distraction Factor. Sanguine keep focusing on this right-hand side of the map. Space Station can try to make a similar play. They don't have 2 Hunters, though, which I think slows down, their tower kill potential, their Fury, their Fire Giant, all that kill potential they had before does disappear slightly from what they had, just because now Dardes is going to have to do it instead on this Morgan. Of course, if he needs to, he can just become Rom, and they still have that going for them. So there's always an ever-present threat that's going to be brought by that Morgan. But so far, at least teamfight-wise, has been happy to go into an Amaterasu, try to get a Dazzling Offensive, buys time for Nika to come over. And that's what's going to change these teamfights late game, is when you get 2 of those stacked on top of each other, or just timed so that one pair of beads does not fix it for the second ult, That's going to be dangerous for Sanguine.
Sanguine had a ton of sentry wards just now. You're seeing even more of them come down. They had them on all corners around mid, into both of the paths, into the jungles on each side of the map, and one on gold. They were trying to use that vision to find some picks here in the jungle. You can kind of see how both of these teams are spending some of their cash right now, whereas Spacestation might just be finishing off items. Sanguine are really investing into trying to get some vision to make a move, and it didn't completely pan out there for them on the back side of it, Gore. But they've got some interesting items finished off here. The Sledge, the Magus, the Kin Size are all huge items for Sanguine to help their power spikes equally. So is the Kins for Vote, the Deso, and the Brawlers. And it looks like Space Station agree. They're moving on to the Fury. The Frenzy has been popped, so Wrong U drops the ultimate to force them off. But they stick the Gold Fury. Space Station get the objective. Netroid's already used the airstrike, and Vote is low. Panatom getting there, but Aegis buys some time, and Vote still standing. Dardes able to claim the kill, but Yarko comes in to clean it up. It's 1-for-1, Hunter for Jungler. But remember, SSG got the Fury, and Sanguine are left wishing there was more they could do.
You needed way more off of that for Sanguine to make it at least feel even for you. Now, once again fighting at that deficit, but it's one of my favorite things when me and Mifflin talk about Sanguine. I've stolen it from him because I just think it's funny, but 5k down is still somehow a Sanguine lead, at least it feels like in certain circumstances, so we'll have to see if they can still make something happen.
That's a nuts ult there from Shinto, hitting both, puts Rapper in kill threshold. But Nika and Dardes are relentless, the double Amaterasu. If you don't ban Ama, then we're gonna play too, and Dardes shuts down Shinto to get the 1-for-1 return kill. But Yarkor getting aggressive with the Cthulhu. Dardes having to use the Aegis to try and get out of there, but they know where he is. They caught him with a tick of the damage, and Dardes still available. Yarkor improves to 6-1 and 6, having a game for himself, even with Nika playing the Ama. And this game's still staying even here for Sanguine. Cheerio blinking in, but Netroid gets a peel, gets some cover. Nika comes in with the dazzling offensive and cuts down the Jingwei, and Vote is now here to say hello as well. And Panatom can't live up to the pressure. This fight now favoring SSG.
And they're chasing down Wrong U. It's one more kill there, but Yarkor's not stopping. That's the one thing about these teams. I mean, respawns have come through. They've re-engaged at this point on both of these teams. They still end up standing their ground. Yarkor 7-0-6 since that first blood we saw, and he's still willing to get aggressive. I mean, look how low Nika is. Honestly, the only thing stopping Yarkor is that mana bar right now.
He is going to have to take the back. Luckily for SSG, or for Sanguine, I should say, despite the fact they lost 4 people there, Space Station really couldn't do all that much on the back of it, so this only a little over 1,000 gold in favor of SSG as a result. Big experience deficit, though, showing up for Cheerio. He's 2 levels up over where Panatom is right now. A little bit of a lead in the support roles for SSG as well, but Sanguine have the small lead with Shinto over Dardes. So this would still very, very much even as you start to move into the later stages, but how scary is it having to deal with Nika and Dardes both piloting the Ama in the middle of these team fights? I mean, it's going to be scary for Sanguine if they're not careful trying to fight through all that.
I think at this point you're starting to notice, like you said, the double Amaterasu, it's more of a threat than anybody on Sanguine at least feels prepared for right now. Locking down Dardes is maybe, target number 1, maybe target number 2 just after Nika himself. And even now they're looking for more. Shinto has been willing to throw out these ults almost like it's nothing, unfortunately just off the mark there. And that might just be all she wrote for Sanguine. If Shinto doesn't have the damage to follow up, it feels like the team is just slightly more timid to jump in because they know they don't have that huge burst that's going to be coming for them.
Probably should play it a bit slower, especially since we know that Shinto's build is not going to have a ton of CDR in it. That's exactly what he went last time. Divine Ruin, Magus, and Soul Reaver with just that Mage's Blessing, essentially, for some CDR there to help. So they need to wait until that's back up for them. Worth noting also, Netroid not having Aegis here this game elects to go the upgraded Shell, which we sometimes do see from these backline carries, especially against auto-attack assassins like the Nemesis. Even Nika has been a real auto-attack related problem, so hopefully should get some big value for him here this game, as he needs every bit of help he can get.
Yeah, you're really, well, honestly, genuinely hoping for Netroid to be able to find a little bit of utility out of that. I also think it's two-parted. Theoretically, if he can pop that so that Shinto gets some of the advantage as well, that will help them, again, twofold. You save yourself as Jingwei, who already has some pretty good self-peel, at least self-disengage as well. And then Shinto, who we had highlighted in Game 1, and I think now 20 minutes in, it's worth mentioning as well, he's only got the dash. He's only got so much. He either kills you with all of the damage, or he hopes that that gets him far enough away and his team can peel, because otherwise, Shinto, I mean, he had to burn his Aegis there, still ended up going down in the last fight. So having 2 upgraded shells that could come onto him and give him that little bit of extra layer protection is going to be incredibly helpful for them. But it's still, I mean, right now, kind of the Yarkor show, at least for me, for Sanguine. Everybody else has been doing their part. You know, Rongyu's been getting great setup, but Yarkor is, honestly, it feels like the only thing that's kept them so close in this game. And they're still about 2,000 gold down, maybe a little less, 1,500 here, as they are going to be grouping up. Oni Fury is our Sanguine's favorite Fury, so I expect them to be in perfect position for this one.
I'm sure they will be. Take a look at the damage charts. Cheerio already on the Nemesis pick, with more than we saw Panatom end with in the last game. So clearly a bit of an outlier there for Panatom in that one. Just a struggle, as he's looking much better on this Pele here so far. Even though 3, 5, and 10, not the most impressive slash line. You brought up the Oni Fury. Well, it was SSG that gave its attention to the Fury first. They already have it down low, but Yarkor moving in. Nika already a bit low too, but Yarkor, the Dharmic Killers, takes a ton of damage. Nika, though, is the one that falls. Somehow Yarkor still stands, but Vote takes care of that. The Snipes able to take care of the opposing solo laner, even sends one Panatom's way. So both solo laners take it out of the fight early, and if SSG still want the Fury, they're going to have to earn it.
I mean, Finch, just watching Yarkor step out of there, if there's not a Rom on the other side, he's alive. And that's just frightening to think about. They finally stop his reign of tyranny.
Oh, you don't win this.
They're getting aggressive, too. Sanguine want more.
Good shell coming out, and the airstrike gets him out, and Dardes now a bit overcommitted, and if he transforms, he is just a Morrigan left in the field, but Panatom didn't know where he was, and Cheerio gets the double underneath the tier 1 tower. Dardes with the okie doke, he slips back out of there inside the stealth, and Sanguine just couldn't track him.
And in case you got to miss it there, they get the Oni Fury on top of it. They got everything they wanted in that fight. I mean, you win, you get a double kill. You burn virtually every single relic on the side of Sanguine as well, and you get yourselves the Oni Fury. It's just a cherry on top that you didn't even need. It's just more aggression than anything. And now it gets them into a position where, again, starting to quake if I'm a Sanguine fan. Things need to change desperately. And it's that Morrigan. It's only the Morrigan there, because you trade out Yarkor for Nika. That's always going to be a good trade, but they can still bring an Amaterasu into the game for Spacestation, and that's why Dardes is maybe that secondary target only to Nika. Always an ever-present threat they have to be worried about.
This Ganesh has been a real problem too. It's helping with the Fire Giant as it gets lower. Panatom wants to help, but what can Panatom do? Volcanic Lightning used defensively, and Vote says you cannot escape Fire Giant belonging to SSG. All 5 members getting to wear it, and Sanguine have to disengage. Space Station, they've stepped on the gas here, haven't they, Gore? The fight around the Fury, where Cheerio chases 2 under tower. They come right back over to Fire Giant, take that, and take Panatom's life. Now, it's onto the tier 2 tower. Sanguine probably looking around wondering what happened.
Now we're starting to see what these picks can do late game. I mean, we were talking about how all five of them are just phenomenal here, and now we're just seeing it come to fruition, I think, more than anything. Unfortunately for Sanguine, Ronyu had a lot of great setup early on, but their position and their engage has just felt a little off overall. We haven't really gotten to see Ronyu be put in a position where he can make a difference. So maybe that's going to be the key for him, grouping up, trying to take this 5v5, because otherwise they've lost a bunch of towers, and otherwise, well, that 30% win rate I had mentioned about the Pele earlier, it's going to go down here. Panatom, there's a lot riding on this for all of us. For me, and most importantly, because I'm the one who threw out the number.
Well, it's a little bit sooner in the game here, Gore, but it's all the same result, isn't it? Now Space Station suddenly in a very comfortable position, up just about 10,000 gold. There's still even a tier 2 tower to go get in left, plus a tier 1, so they'll be able to cross that 10,000 gold threshold gap once they pick it up, and then they can start threatening this Phoenixes. They've got plenty of time left on Fire, so they really don't even have to go to the tier 2s right away if they don't want to, if they want to go threaten a Phoenix first. But this is just such a strong position for Space Station to be in. They look so comfortable. Cheerios playing so well, as are Dardes and Nika, and so is Raph. We're not giving him enough credit for how great this Ganesh has been this game, too. All 5 of them have played lights out so far, and that's the only reason Sanguine have been struggling like this, is because Spacestation are playing almost flawless.
And that last fight, a lot of it is the focus on the Yarkor. I mean, every other engagement, I mean, Yarkor 7-2-7 for a reason. He's just been a tear through them. But that one kill they were able to find onto him made a huge difference.
This ultimate has stopped Vote for a moment, but Vote eventually collects the tier 2 tower. Dardes drops down, but Yarkor responds with the ultimate. Big damage coming from the backline, but Shinto's the one that's low. Vote puts some damage in and Nika cleans it up, but Cheerio is able to take care of Panatom as well. Vote gets rid of Yarkor, 3-for-1. Only Dardes has fallen for SSG, and as long as Vote is here, they have the shred to burn through these Phoenixes. Wrong You being chased, Wrong You can't even escape. Nika's relentless as he improves to 5-3-9, and that might even just be the game with the left side Phoenix down, with only Netroid up to defend and all of SSG here. Then they should be able to take this game. Gore Netroid being pushed back into the fountain. The damage on the Titan is a little bit too much. It's down to half. Netroid's gone, so that makes the D side SSG claiming their top of the spot at the top of the standings, and boy, have they earned it.
I just don't know. They started out so much better that time around for Sanguine, but the Space Station answered better by the time they started getting those fights. Wrong You, I'd highlighted it there towards the end, but at the beginning of the game, great ults, good riptides, and it really does feel like that one moment where he locked down Cheerio and Cheerio just decided to slaughter them instead is really the moment where you could see SSG's entire mindset change about the pace of that game. It didn't matter what Sanguine did from that point forward. Yarkor had a good game. Everything that they did well just fell apart because you had 2 Amaterasus chasing you down. Vote had an insane set there on Roram, so they had nothing to worry about if they were SSG.
And how many games this weekend have we seen where when the team improves, they lose faster? I don't know. There's something weird about that. Maybe both teams just play better when everyone's playing better. Either way, congrats to Space Station. What a dominant 2-game win for them here. I'll get it back to the desk. Let them break it down.
And a 2-win weekend for SSG at that. All of them, or both of them, 2-0s. So a great weekend to be an SSG fan or an SSG player. This one a lot quicker, though, from game number 1. Mifflin is with me to break this one down and round out the day here. Miff, what'd you see here in game 2? What gave SSG the big advantage?
Man, I tell you what, Dave, I was trying to watch the game. I was trying to see what, where SSG was winning, but Cheerio was just being so loud on that Nemesis, just dominating, that I couldn't talk about anyone else. Dardes, I guess, comes to mind as just a very strong output. He was finding all sorts of nice picks in the jungle, but bro, Cheerio pops off. I think it was 9-3 or something along those lines was the end of the game.
Big.
Just absolutely dominating. I mean, Gore pointed it out. At one point, we saw Wrong You drop an ultimate that locked Cheerio in, and he said, "You're not got me locked in here. You're stuck in here with me." And he just absolutely decimates the enemy team. He's diving towers, 1 versus 2. This dude is absolutely nuts on the Nemesis pick.
Yeah, locked in. I'm going to turn around the damage and kill you at the end of it anyway. And I think that's why maybe we were so surprised that the Nemesis fell down to kind of that second wave of picks, where normally we've seen her either taken away or picked up in those first few. Yeah, 10, 4, and 8 for Cheerio on the Nem. A much better game from Yarkor this time around, 7, 3, and 8. Anika, though, another dominant performance, 5, 3, and 10 on this Amaterasu. And Dardes, I think, 4, 5, and 11. Obviously scoreline-wise isn't, blow me out of the water good. But I think, the Morgan, that utility shoot provides double Amaterasu's. Miff was very difficult to fight into. Why is it you don't think we see a little bit more Morgan?
I think it's just that early game disparity, right? She's so volatile in the early game. If she falls behind ever, it's so hard to hit that power spike where Morgan is valuable outside of the ultimate. No matter what, when you transform into someone, you're going to do as well as that player would. But I think the true strength of Morgan lies in the fact that eventually she's going to hit a point where she's able to stealth up, hit you with the first ability, auto-attack you, hit you with the second ability, and you just won't survive. Until you're up until that point, you're kind of just an ultimate bot. But Dardes makes an argument for it that you could play it in the early game and make it look pretty strong.
Yeah, the man draws at least 2 bans in the first ban wave. Effectively every game he plays still finds a way to make those next gods down look very, very good. SSG 2-0 on the weekend, 4-0 in their games more specifically. And as such, Finch standing by with Dardes. See how he's feeling.
Thank Dave. It's hard to think of someone I want to talk to more after watching that set. Really impressive performance. And I was trying to go down the list to find who was right there with you, but the truth was, everyone on the team was playing really well in this set. What was it that had you guys all clicking like this and all firing on all cylinders?
I don't know what happened, but like our duo lane started to like play good. Like they stopped trolling a bit, so like Vote is going like I don't know, like Vote is popping off somehow. Like I don't know what's going on, but it feels good, honestly. It's
Well,
good
don't
that we're back
sound
together.
so
Like,
surprised.
yeah.
Well, talk to me about the Morrigan pick. I feel like we don't see this get picked up very often, but obviously it should be. Why don't we see more of her, and are we going to get to see any more from you?
I don't know, like I was feeling it, but I think she's a hard girl to play. Like she's probably the hardest girl to play in the game, and it's not always a good Morrigan game. Like so, like you kind of have to like last pick Morrigan, and you have to wait. You have to wait and see. You need like good transformations as well. So that's why she's not getting picked every game because it's not like I said, it's not always a good Morrigan game.
And are you all going to be okay with Nika getting Amaterasu every game for the foreseeable future? It feels like he's just really popping off on that pick right now.
I'm pretty sure, like, I think he played Amy 10 games in a row. So I don't know, like, they keep like giving Amy to him. Like, I'm down. Like, they can keep banning Hera, Afro, and whatever. It's fine because I mean I'm down to play Hunters every game. So I'm actually not like I'm happy that they ban Afro and Hera, so I can play Hunters. And I'm pretty sure Nika is happy as well. He's happy as well to play Amy every game. So.
Well, and that's a good point. You command a lot of attention in the pick ban phase. People are really worried about what you're going to pick. But to me, it doesn't seem to matter what you pick. You always have that performance. Right now, Dardez, are you just the best mid laner doing it? Is anyone up there at your level, man?
I mean, well, I don't think I'm the best. I don't know. I guess I'm the best at my own gods, I guess you can say that. But there's still like a lot of good mid laners out there. Like I'm pretty sure like Shinto is really good. Twitch is really good at his gods as well. I don't know, Heroin as well as Janus. I feel there's so many good mid laners out there. We just have like everyone has like his certain gods and that's it.
That's exactly right. Everyone gets strong right now, but you all are up there at the top of the standings. Congrats to Space Station off that incredibly strong win, and you all can enjoy this quick video reminding you that you might need to consider a chair upgrade.
You have yet to see the meaning of cruel.
Let the heavens rage!
That's right. I wasn't going to get out of this one without talking to you guys a little bit about yours. But look, I'm just here. I was here to talk to you guys. I'm not here to tell you to do anything. I'm not going to, make anyone do anything one way or another. I just want you to look quickly into Miff's eyes. Now, right back to my eyes. Now look at the watch. Think of these words. Chair. Maxonomic. Cushion. Lower back freedom. Pain-free gaming. Chair ward. I don't know, I'm running out of words here. Mifflin, throw one in there. Comfort again. Needforseat.com. Real comfy.
Like,
we are right there. Go to needforseat.com and buy your Maxonomic chair real quick. Chair ward in game, all that sort of fun stuff. But what a way to round out the weekend here, Mifflin. A quick one all things considered, when we expected these two teams to maybe go the full difference in potentially a 3-game set. It was a lengthy one to start off. SSG then take it in 26 minutes. Of course, Radiance versus PK. That'll be played at a later date. But look at this weekend, man. Friday, Saturday, and then the one game we have today, all 2-0s.
All 2-0s, and today's 2-0 almost as long as some of the entire sets that we saw in previous days. I think we're getting to a point now where the teams are really starting to establish what's going on in the meta, what they are trying to figure out and do. We're really starting to get past the point where we're trying to figure out what are these teams' identities, and now they're really ironing out how they want to execute on it, and that's why we're seeing some of these direct head-to-heads go so much more quickly.
Spacestation Gaming, first place, I guess, after their game here. Radiance, of course, only 8 games played to SSG's 9, so sort of asterisk first place, I suppose. But they've earned it. They've earned that first place spot. We'll take a look at what we're going to see next week, though. See maybe how some of these standings are going to shift around. We're going to start off the week with Ghost Gaming up against the Renegades. PK United will round out the day on Friday. A big one between Ghost and the Knights then on Sunday as well. Anything jump out at you there, Mifflin? Maybe Radiance versus Sanguine on Saturday?
You know what? You led me to water there, but yeah, it is Radiance up against Sanguine. I want to see whether or not that Sanguine mishap up against SSG can repeat. I want to see how they've really established themselves into those top-seeded teams. But my eyes are also drifting towards that PK versus E United matchup. I think E United's, again, been making a lot of strides towards becoming a much better team. They're starting to figure out how they're going to look for these wins. And I consider PK to be that gatekeeper to the upper echelon of the SPL. If E United could take a game off of them, who's to say that they can't take a game off of Sanguine or even Radiance or Ghost or SSG or something along those lines?
You know, Miff, when I look back at this weekend, and, you know, as admittedly as quick as it was with a lot of 2-0s on the table, and I was just surprised at, you know, how fast it truly was. Does anything stand out to you? Any big takeaways, kind of final thoughts on the weekend?
Don't give Nika Amaterasu. Nemesis is really good. You have to ban Dardez's Hera. Even if you do ban Dardez's Hera, it's not going to be enough. There's a lot going on there. Buy a chair. Buy a chair. Comfy. Real comfy. Back.
That's right, real. There you go. Look deep into my eyes. Ladies and gentlemen, that's it for this week in the SPL. You will tune in next Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time to watch more SPL action. But on behalf of myself, Mifflin, all the other casters, everyone back in production, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.